What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. It's Valentine's season, so we are all thinking about love. But how do you define true love? And how do we love our enemies? And is it okay to love oneself? Join the discussion today here on the DudeFax podcast.
Welcome to the DudeFax podcast. We're four guys who in the past all served in the same youth ministry together. Now, more than 10 years later, 10 years older, but not really 10 years more mature, we felt it was time to join forces once again. So now we create weekly podcasts dealing with pop culture, ministry, and church life, and mixed all throughout is a healthy dose of the humor you would only expect from old youth pastors. So if you love Jesus, the local church, and laughter, you're going to fit right in. We encourage you to sit back, relax, grab an ice cold Dr. Pepper, and enjoy this week's episode of the DudeFax podcast.
Clip.
And so it goes until the day you die. This thing they call love is gonna make you cry.
All right, we're talking about love.
Yeah, wedding singer.
Part 2 of today's episode of the DudeFax. If you're sticking around from part 1, thank you. If you didn't watch part 1 or listen to it, you want to. I promise you do.
Yep.
Like, we know it's best. Go back, listen to it. You'll be glad. Thank us later. But on this episode, we're coming up on Valentine's Day. It's 2 days from when this podcast airs, drops, uploads, downloads, whatever, streams. And so we were wanting to help you be prepped for your Valentine's Day celebrations. We gave you a bunch of Christian pickup lines in part 1, and now we're going to talk about love. Loving others, loving self, loving our enemies. What does all that mean, look like? Is it okay to love yourself, and what all those things look like? And we just want to make sure that you are prepared to be a loving person this week, right? In a biblical sense, but not in a biblical sense, because that could be taken two ways.
Yeah.
I should back up on that.
Not in the way that phrase is normally
No, not in that way. In a God-honoring way.
Yes.
I almost
There
played
you
the
go.
sloth sound.
Whatever your hand finds to do.
For the people who skip to the serious part,
Sorry.
maybe just give them a few more minutes ahead.
Yeah.
We'll get it out. It's fine.
Can we just agree, though, with Valentine's
We'll get what out?
Day, that the little candy hearts that taste like chalk are like the worst idea ever? Who decided that? Like that was the way we're going to show love?
No, they're terrible. A much better way to show love is 90s X-Men Valentine cards,
Ooh,
Oh.
which I used to love.
I do like
giving
that.
out.
Nothing says
No.
love like Wolverine.
Yeah.
I prefer money. Don't buy me
So
crap.
the
Just
best
give me
way
money.
To love people is money. Is that what you're saying? I feel most
To
loved.
me.
Yeah.
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 I'm with you. You know, I might be the oddball. I like the candy hearts.
Really?
I like them too.
Smarties candies. You
I
the
do like
little
Smarties.
I do like
Yeah.
Smarties.
Little tartar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, love.
More tart.
I actually was just looking up here, thinking about true love. True love. That's
Did you just have a seizure there, Josh?
so. Yeah, so I was looking, and just to see what people think about true love, 86% of Americans believe that true love exists. So that's a high percentage, but only 66% feel like they have ever experienced it. Have you guys ever experienced
Really?
true love?
Yeah, I know Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Jesus Juke.
Had it queued up and ready. Yeah,
It was coming.
absolutely.
We're all married. We have to say yes.
I'm surprised that only 66% said that they've experienced, because even those who may not have a significant other, at one point you would think that they had somebody that they.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be 3% higher.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you talk about marriage and true love. Married couples, 85% say yes, they've experienced true love, but 15% say no. So they should have a section that says married 100%, married about to divorce.
Yeah.
100%, because that's
Marriage is a give and take. I give, she takes.
So are they only talking about love in the like eros form of love? Not because I'm thinking like my parents have shown me like true love.
Yeah.
I've had true love with like many friends and family. I felt like I felt love. Obviously, my wife, and obviously first and foremost Jesus. But so are they thinking more of just like the romantic type of love?
And that's what's interesting in this article is they never really define it. They just jump right in and say true love.
Interesting.
And if you think just a normal American society and they're trying to define love or true love, it's probably a mixture of like romantic
My
love.
person.
Yeah. And then people, someone taking care of me, meeting needs. And there's probably a mixture of things there to where a lot of people would say, maybe even if you're married, you're like, well, I haven't really experienced true love because I only receive it in this way or just that way from my spouse. But I think as believers, we have we're able to have such a deeper understanding of what love is, what true love is, and can say that we've experienced it. I think just being a believer, just being a follower of Jesus. I mean, as Jesus juked earlier, I mean, you have experienced true love through His love for us. But I do just find it interesting that people who have never married, they say 57% that there's not true love, but those who are married are 15%. So at least it drops to those who are married.
Which,
So
that's
you
a
guys,
good opportunity to say, hey, happy Singles Awareness Day to all you suckers out there by yourself.
Maybe it's their gift.
Gift of suck it.
So is it the same on Valentine's Day like it is? We have to be careful on like Mother's Day now when we talk about mothers in church and all that. Like,
No.
Do we have to be careful on Valentine's Day?
No, there's a reason you're single.
Not offend our singles.
Be better. There's a reason you're single.
That one of the episode of The Office, they got really upset with people that
Lonely
about
Hearts Club.
Valentine's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody can't be rubbing it in people's faces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I try not to rub my love in people's faces.
Thank you for defining.
Do you not realize I have had diarrhea since Easter's?
Jeff is marking away over there.
That article
Plop it out on the table
because I feel like it kind of speaks to the our culture as a whole, and I feel like there's a misunderstanding of what love is, and that there are different kinds of love. Because I feel like it
Somebody's not being loved in Grant's house right now.
Not my problem.
I feel like it goes to a part, because like as men, we are oftentimes, and especially in our American culture, we don't like to be vulnerable with each other, but a lot of men don't like to be vulnerable at all. And to say like to look at a friend and say I love you is hard for a lot of people, and I feel like it's because people have a fundamental misunderstanding of what love is. Because really what true love is caring about someone more than you do yourself, and caring about their well-being and wanting them to be happy and fulfilled. And I think that that we have a hard time culturally expressing that a lot of times, because people just have this weird understanding of like the word love, and they just things pop in their head that are not all the times entirely accurate.
Yeah, and I think it is usually just in culture. It's romantic attraction is usually
Mm-hmm.
I love you. So it may be weird, for just guy friends to say it or whatever. But I think if they do, they're dipping into a deeper understanding of what it is, and it's not just a romantic attraction. It's and I know that you get me and you care for me and you know all about me, but you still accept me, and I know I can count on you. Things like that. That's showing love to each other, and they're starting to then dip in probably a little more into what true love actually is in those situations. I know I probably say it way too quickly to guys, especially at church. You know,
You're like a middle school boy at a youth camp.
I know, just tell them all I love them.
Crying at campfire.
Yeah, last night, and then throw up on the councilman's shoes. That's for you, Scott. So, where have you guys seen, maybe if we're trying to get maybe outside of the church first to start with, where have you seen people maybe really show true love and concern to others, maybe within just a cultural context? Like, I think in the church, it's almost expected, so we know, okay, we're going to do this. But do you ever really see that shown outside?
It's interesting because one of the questions I always have to ask myself when I see a community outside the church, a secular community that seems to show love as we might define it as human beings, or be tempted to define it as human beings, but show love, I always have to sort of step back and think, where is that coming from? Because biblically, we know that God is love. Obviously, it says that in Scripture in 1 John, God is love. And so we know it's a part of his nature, that it's from him, that we're able to love others because of God in us. But then I sit back and I see people who don't know the Lord, but they seem to be exhibiting love too. So it's sort of, how are we truly defining it? And, is it something different, but we just call it all love? And I think it's probably all of the above. But, I do see in a lot of communities, people tend to go to different communities because they find acceptance in what they feel like is love. One of the neat things, I don't know if any of you guys have done a Spartan race, but done like maybe 10 Spartan races in my lifetime. And the very first time I ever did one, my first time doing an obstacle course race, and I did it with some soldiers that, I got to work with back in like 2013. And
I'm feeling so
I'm
gypped,
forgetting about our
Jeff.
urban athlon. Yes,
Come on.
I can't forget our urban athlon.
The cave bathers.
So,
come on.
yes, that is true. I did an obstacle race before that, but a Spartan race. Okay, a little bit different. That was awesome. But I did this with these soldiers, and so it was different because we did a tag team thing in Chicago with the urban athlon. This was, you all did it together. Yeah. So we're all running this together, and we're helping each other over walls and through mud pits and all this stuff. But it was neat because not only were the people that I went to the race doing this, there were people that I didn't know. I saw people helping each other over walls, encourage, like, hey, you can do it. People struggling to do certain obstacles, and they're like, hey, you got this. And like staying behind, not running ahead to help. And I remember being really impressed by that, how this community just really showed this level of support. And I think in many cases, people would say love to one another. And I think, because we're created by God, we have it in us to love and to show kindness. However, I think it's God who gives us that ability fully to do it to the fullest, and how he would define love, which obviously comes from him. And so, I think you see it in the world, but I still believe wholeheartedly it cannot be at its fullest without God at the center of it. And unfortunately, Christians, sometimes we're bad examples, when we go out and not show love.
Or film it for a TikTok.
Yeah, or film it for a TikTok. But, we don't show love, or we get angry. As we talked about the sinful states, we get angry and upset when we're driving and we're not kind to people, or we don't let somebody in, or we're that turd that rides somebody's tail and honks. Instead of, showing patience and kindness, the things that love, is and is defined as being in the Bible. We're seeing the world do these things because, again, our Creator designed us to do it, but it's just, ultimately tapping into Him working in us that will show it to its fullest, I believe.
Well, riddle me this one, because I've always heard it taught one way, but I think I am thinking about it a different way now. When Jesus says, greater love has no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends, we often think about that as somebody willing to die for somebody else. But I mean, obviously Jesus did that, and there's so many medals of honor winners and Silver Star winners in our military who have done that. But I think laying down your life is more than just laying down your death. Like Jesus lived for people, and he sacrificed himself every day to be sinless, so he could die at the end of his life for us. Um, so I think that's a huge difference. Like in our culture, our church plant would try to do service evangelism in order to kind of make an impact and even cast a good name for our church in the community. But one of the challenges there is most of our businesses that are based in the Northwest, and a lot of businesses have headquarters here in Vancouver, Washington, to avoid taxes. They give their employees like it's not uncommon for them to give 2 weeks of paid volunteer days. And with their volunteer days, I mean, they do so much more good than the church ever will, and so much more resourced than most local churches are. So on the outside, it's hard to look at that and say that we're more loving than them as Christians. But I think for me, the Jesus-like love that we're called to show, like, ought to have some kind of me choosing to live for others. Not just at moments, but lay down my life. Not just my death, but my life for others. Especially when I don't feel like it.
I like what you're saying there, and that change in what Scripture says to a much harder meaning, a much more challenging meaning.
Yeah.
I've heard someone say once, like, it's easy to say you'll die for someone, but will you live for someone?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're saying. You know, we read in Hebrews that Jesus suffered every day of his life, and because he had emptied himself, because he had given up the divine right, divine privileges, laid those to the side.
That kenosis.
Yeah, and the kenosis with the mostest.
Eating hostess.
We're all trying to think of another.
Obi-Wan kenosis.
Learning through osmosis. Anybody else got one?
No, I did, but it's the grossest.
So yeah, but that is love. And so you're talking about guys on the race you were in, and we've all experienced that in our life in some way. I think even if you're broken down on the side of the road and somebody stops to help you, there's this idea. What? I'm just saying, like,
No. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay. That
You know the trend of the guys slow down and say you can't park there and speed off. That's me.
Nice. So that was you. Okay.
Yeah.
Except for Grant, it's people may not know it, but it's an act of love towards somebody else when we begin to define love biblically. And it's not just somebody being nice or somebody, feeling like they should or compelled. Like it's really this act of love that I think is part of the common grace we all experience, just living in a world created by our Father, whether we're believers or not. That there is that experience of His love still being shown through other people, whether they're His followers or not, and to other people, whether they're His followers or not. And we hear this in church a lot, and around the table here, God's love is not emotional, although there is emotion in Him.
Dude, tell worship pastors.
Yeah.
Mike, we love you.
Emotions, and that's good. There is emotional love, but God's love is all determined, and it's based on need. I was teaching a parenting class a few years ago, and they were trying to describe the word agape, and I really appreciated the definition that they came up with. And they said, agape love, that love of God, it's a choice of, it's a determined choice of my will to meet your needs and best interest, regardless of the cost to me. So, they're talking about how to love their kids, that you want to give our kids what they need, what's in their best interest. And I've already committed to that beforehand. Right? It's a predetermined act of my will to do this, and I'll do it to whatever it costs me. And that's, of course, how we were loved by God through Christ. But then, we're to love others with that type of definition of love. So when somebody stops to help change a tire, they're giving you what you need and what's best. When somebody helps you over an obstacle at the mud run, Tough Mudder,
Spartan race or
Spartan,
the urban athlon.
urban athlon, those things.
The-
I mean, that's
Mother
where
Udder.
people are experiencing that even in the world, and it's almost like God has got something figured out that as we love each other like that, He does tell us people we're His followers, and they'll be drawn into, or they'll be maybe develop this desire to know more about why we live like that all the time, and not just a random thing here or there. But someone said it earlier. We don't. I think you said it. Like we don't really. Oh no, you're saying it, Grant. That we don't really love that well or that often. That companies and employees and other secular businesses are doing better than we are.
Dude, Bill Gates lives in my state. I'm not going to be more loving than he's been in 2 seconds with his philanthropy.
Yeah.
I will say though that true love
And
is not
Bezos.
always like based on like the act that you're doing. Because motives can be self-serving and selfish.
That's true.
And in that, that's not really, you're not really doing something out of love for other people. You're doing something because it benefits you. Not to say that, loving people can't benefit you, because that, can definitely be happening. But if that's your goal, and your goal is not to, lay down yourself for other people, your goal is to, I'm doing this because I'm getting something out of it, then like, yeah, that person may be like physically having some need met or something, but you're, it's not coming from a place of love in you. They may experience it as love, but you are not, having, there's a give and take to to love and relationships and things, and you're not getting what you could out of that because your mind's not, or your heart's not in the right place.
Yeah, philanthropy is not necessarily an indicator of love, obviously, but it's more about. I actually heard 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy, who may be the Super Bowl winner. We don't know, or we do know.
Or he was.
But anyway, he's a strong believer. Heard a great interview with him the other day, and he was talking about living his life for something much greater. That common thing that a lot of athletes say. But he really does express a genuine hardship towards wanting to live for Jesus. But he said something neat the other day. He said, my life is not just about living, but it's about impacting. And I think that's what love, that's when love is truly demonstrated, when we're going to make an impact for someone else, not for ourselves. It's not just, hey, I'm going to give because I have a bunch of money, or I'm going to give because I want to be seen, or I should do it. I'm doing it out of guilt, but it's more about, I want to impact people, specifically as Christians, impact people because we want them to experience the love of Jesus. But it's about, loving them more than ourselves. It's about wanting the best for them. It's about wanting them to find joy, to be happy, showing that type of love to where we generally want to impact somebody. And I think
Are you sure he wasn't talking football? Like
he might have been
impacting
talking
people?
football too, but it translates well. But it's I think as Christians we forget that, and we've already talked about how we struggle as a church sometimes to show that type of love. And I think we fall into the same trap that everybody else is. Somebody who may have a lot of money and do all these great things and give a lot of money towards causes and things like that.
But without love, he's a clanging gong.
Of just doing these things because we feel guilty, like we should. Oh, I should love my neighbor, or I should, reach out to this person, or I should share the gospel. It's more about a guilt and not a genuine desire to impact them for Jesus, to give them the good news, to love on them. And I think that's not something we can just simply change the formula and do. We've got to get our hearts right with God first, so that we can do that.
Which, back to that original Jesus juke, that yes, we know Jesus. Josh talked about emptying himself. That really comes from Philippians 2. And I think there's a couple points I think we should keep in mind considering starting to love other people. It's doing nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility, count others better than yourselves, which is not degrading yourself. It's actually taking it as much as you love yourself and loving other people better. Because then it continues, each of you should not look only to your own interests, because it doesn't say not to do that. It says, but also to the interests of others. Your attitude should be the same as that of Jesus Christ, who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human form, and of course, dying on the cross for us. So I think it's, as much as we think about ourselves, which is all the time, it's thinking about others even more than that, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think he's appealing to our natural tendencies, obviously, that we are going to love ourselves and we're going to think about ourselves. I mean, what's the first thing we think of when we get up? It's always something selfish. I mean, whether like I'm tired, I got to
Yeah, I was thinking about going pee.
It's that time. Valentine's, all that good stuff. But we think about things selfishly, just naturally, and so Paul's appealing to that. But yeah, I like that. Think of others. It's more important than yourselves. Look out for their interests. It's not to say we can't love self, but it's to say, hey, you know how high in regard you hold yourself. Well, others have got to be up there too. In fact, you've got to put them before yourselves. Because that's how you're going to show genuine love. It's not going to be just sort of throwing them a bone here, but taking care of yourself. It's elevating them, to the point of where you're caring more about their needs. And if we're all caring about each other's needs, then we're all going to be taken care of in love. So God's design is perfect. We just screw it up and mess it up.
I have this bumper sticker with rainbows and butterflies, and it's an acronym for joy. No, Jesus, others, yourself.
I like it.
Sorry if you haven't been to a Christian bookstore since 1990, but
They're all
yeah.
closed.
Well, they closed the one here. So.
Yeah.
Oh, did they?
That's why
That's why
we're
we're
sinful.
sinful.
Yeah. We have no more testaments.
I mean, they even shut Lifeway down in Nashville.
They blew it up, right?
And they built a building and then sold it. Now they're leasing it, and they have a little corner. Anyways, so I think this is a good
Death
point
way.
when we can start talking about loving self and where that's tied in. But before we do there, I wanted to respond to something that Ryan said, and we've been around it, but this idea of motivation and why are we trying to love other people? I know you guys don't like the show Friends. It's okay. But there is an episode in there where Phoebe, it's her goal to do something completely selfless for somebody else, and she does not want to get any type of return or thank you or payback. So she tries all these ways, but there's always something that comes about where somebody thanks her or whatever. So she's getting something in return, and I think one that's not a bad thing. There is the motivation of I'm doing this to be seen, and that's where we get the passage in 1 Corinthians 13 about we do
Right
all these
hand,
things for self.
left hand.
And, yeah. But in John 15, when Jesus is there upper room, all of his disciples, he's talking about these famous passages of a new command I give you, that you love each other the way I've loved you, and your love for each other will be the proof to the world that you're my disciples. But like in the middle of all that, Jesus says, I'm telling you all these things, and it's sandwiched right in between two verses about loving each other. And the way God has loved us. I mean, right before that is how God has loved us through Christ. But all that together, and then he says, I tell you these things that your joy may be complete. And there's a benefit to following Jesus. Yeah, there you go. There's a benefit to following Jesus, and that's joy in our life, right? That's this idea of just complete contentment no matter the circumstance, and that's what Jesus wants for us. So what we receive when we love each other, it shouldn't be the motivation of, I hope I get noticed for this, or they're then going to owe me. But man,
Dwight and Andy,
you
owe me.
Yeah, sweet tarts. Y'all can give me little heart candies if you want. But there's this motivation, I think, or there can be, or there should be in us, of as I give, I know I can experience contentment because God's got me taken care of. I don't mind helping. He's met my needs, and I know my needs will be met in the future when they come, and I don't have to worry about that, whatever it is. And I've seen him do it in the past. So I know if I give generously now or whatever, he's on. That's the joy that Jesus is talking about. I think in part here, when he's commanded us to love each other the way he's loved us, is that it will bring joy. And I think we can pursue that. I think that's okay. I don't feel guilty if you see a need and you think, you know what, I'm going to, and I want to see what God does. See what he does in my life because of this. And walking away from that, being like, man, that felt really good, because you know it's going to. God is just good to us to even give us gifts like that. I mean, it could have just been the command, love your neighbor like you love yourself, or else, but tied into that is this blessing of joy and peace, and encouragement that comes when we love each other well. When he did say, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and then as Paul wrote about it, there is this, we talked about, when you talk about the Philippians, there is this expectation that we are loving ourselves already. So when people talk about self-love, where do we cross a line there, though? Is it wrong to love yourself?
It's not wrong to love yourself, but the way the world presents it, obviously, I think we've got to be very careful with that mentality, because the world will say you need to love yourself. And there's also that common thought that I think has bled into the churches, but obviously come from the world, that's you can't love anybody else unless you love yourself. And, that the thought is that there's a lot of people out there who just don't love themselves. No doubt there's people out there who may be miserable about their circumstances, but at the end of the day, our natural tendencies still are to take care of ourselves. And so there are some ways that we show love to ourselves, whether we admit it or realize it or not. So when he says, love like we love ourselves, I don't think, obviously there's no command, hey, you shouldn't be loving yourselves. Like, hey, love other people, stop loving yourselves. It's, hey, you guys are already doing this correctly and right, for the most part, or how to do this anyway. Maybe not correctly is a bad term, but you're doing this. You know how to do it. It's instinctual. Now take that, and going back to the interest of others, it's elevating their interest and putting it on that same level and making that priority like we make ourselves priority. But I think it's important that we understand our identity, who we are in Christ, realize, that we were created for a purpose, and love ourselves, in such a way that we're thankful for the life that God has given us. But we do it in a way so that we can love and serve others. But when it becomes, obviously, that point of, we've elevated ourselves above God, we've elevated ourselves before others, obviously, that's where the problem comes into play.
I think there's a kind of a balancing act as well, because there are ways that people, we love ourselves in the way that, obviously we want to take care of ourselves, and we want to, make sure that we eat, make sure that we, get enough sleep and things like that. But there are ways that people neglect themselves, whether consciously or, subconsciously, due to some, something that happened in their life. And I think that dealing with those things is important, and taking care of yourself in those ways is important, so that you can then share that love with other people. Because, you can't, if you're giving out everything and you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to burn out, and you're eventually going to, not be any good for anyone, much less yourself. And so I think there is an important line there, but it is a balancing act. We need to make sure that we're not putting too much into ourselves, that we are ignoring other people. So we, it's and I think it's different for everybody, but I think it's, something, a balance that you need to find in your life to to really genuinely connect and find joy, like you were talking about.
Well, you see Jesus in different times, like praying in the garden frequently whenever they're in that area, or hopping in the boat to retreat from the crowds, but then the crowds follow him around the Sea of Galilee, and then he ministers to them all over again. And falling asleep on the boat another time with his disciples, and there's a crazy storm, and they wake him up, and he says, "Peace, be still." And he's like, "Guys, quit bugging me." So I think, Jesus being the prime example, he cares for himself, yet often in the middle of caring for himself, he does ministry too. So it's hard to know, like you're saying, Ryan, like it's hard to know like what fulfills, because ministry, if we're talking about loving other people, especially at our expense or above our own, that's what ministry is, right? Serving other people is ministry, the same way God ministers to us. And ministry is like golf. We all suck at it. No one's really good at golf. But every so often you'll have like one good shot. It's like, okay, I'll go back.
Keep trying.
And it fills you up, It's, that one person. Say what?
In golf?
I'm going to give up.
Or ministry.
Ministry. Yeah.
Both.
Let me tell you why I suck.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
It's hard to know.
It is, and I think there is a difference, or there can be a difference between the idea of self-love and self-care, because there are ways, caring for ourselves to stay healthy, physically, emotionally, mentally. All those things are important, or we aren't any good to others. And I think in this argument, it may be easy for people to kind of tend towards one end of the spectrum or the other, where one end would be like indulgence. Like, man, you're a believer. You can do anything you want to. Go have that spa day. Go drink that bottle of wine. Whatever you need to do to relax.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Yeah.
Me time.
But then the other end of that is equally as wrong and hurtful, and that's, asceticism, where you're like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to deny myself and give everything away to others, and to the end of where I'm going to starve myself so that others can eat. Now, I can see like a Christian like really caring for someone to that extent. Like, well, they need food, I need food, I'm going to give it to them. But if that's like the manner of your life all the time, you're not caring for your body in a way that allows you to do what you're being called to do. And so it is maybe that finding that healthy line somewhere in the middle. Two things that I was confronted with when I was going through my addiction recovery that I was told this is going to be very helpful. One was it was self-care. Like you got to do things that good things that release dopamine in your brain. So your brain learns this is where good comes from. And they're like, listen to good music, go for a walk, eat good food, things like that. And it was an important part of the recovery, but at the same time, I was also being challenged and again, I forget if this was in a book or what, but the quickest way to heal in your life, whatever the hurt is to find somebody else that's suffering with the same issue and meet that need for them. So, if you're dealing with the loss, maybe a death, someone that you really love, and it's difficult and you're grieving, well, find somebody else that's gone through that and love them. And there's something in meeting the needs of someone else that has the same exact need as you that God uses to show, I can use this hurt in your life, this difficult in your life, to love other people even while you're in it. So it's not beneficial to say, I'm in a bad spot, I really need to get myself healthy before I can minister to others. No, you're in the perfect spot. If you know you're hurting and Jesus is the answer and that's what you're trying, go share that with someone else. You'll be able to comfort them well. But it's also not good just to ignore those things at the same time. So yeah, that can be a difficult balance.
Well, they're not exclusive either. You can do both at the same time. You don't have to wait to love other people by getting yourself right first. You can do both.
Absolutely, because again, we have it in us to take care of ourselves, even if we do a poor job of it. Mm-hmm. So we know that we at least have an idea of how we can take care of others as well, and so obviously, there's practice that we can put into place. The more that we grow closer to God and He works in us, and we learn how to effectively minister and do a good job at ministering, hit more of those holes in one or whatever, those good golf shots. But at the end of the day, that's not an excuse to wait until we're an expert to go out and try to do this. We're called to do it now, and so I do think we hear it a lot of times in the chaplaincy too. Is care for the caregiver. We've got to take care of ourselves. I think we need to love ourselves to the point of where we, again, respect what God has created. In that we're going to take care of our bodies, we're going to take care of our minds, we're going to fill ourselves with God because He's the one ultimately who takes care of us and sustains us to the point of where we can be used most effectively, and our minds are in step with His Spirit, so that we're aware of these opportunities to be used and to show love to others.
So would you say no Amin is doper than God's dope Amin?
Yeah, there's your bumper sticker right
Too far
there.
across
Oh,
the
that's-
line.
I was going for another one, but that worked okay.
Jesus Juke.
It's dope. Yo.
I mean,
That opotamus is so hip.
so I do a kind of an intro to Christianity, what it means to follow Jesus class at our church every now and then. And we talk a lot about ministry, meeting the needs of others, and loving them well. And so I came with like this real cheesy acronym for love.
Joy?
And no, this is
LOVE.
this actually it's about the same cheese level, but L is if we're trying to figure out how do we do this. Okay,
It's
so
for
we think-
the way you look at me. Oh.
keep going.
It's for the only one I see.
V.
It's very, very extraordinary now. E. Even more than anyone that you adore and love. I'll stop. So you seen that in your class?
So here's mine. Here's what I came up with. This is trying to help people that are kind of brand new to following Jesus and trying to love each other in the way He loved us. A good first step is just to think through, well, what are some of the resources I have? Like, what do I know in life? What have I been through? Even like physically, what are some of the things I have that I can share, stuff like that, and just be aware of those things. And then the O is to observe others, but do it in a way that's intentional. Like I'm gonna try to look at my friends, my neighbors, my family, with an eye to try to discern what their needs are, like physical needs, financial needs, or whatever. So have that like where you're just looking for ways and opportunities to love each other and not being just completely distracted by other things or what you want, but you're looking intentionally that way. V is view those needs then as your own. So this is where it gets to loving others the way you love yourself. It's like, okay, well, if that was my need, how would I want someone to meet it in my life? And I think that's a great way to begin to apply love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, what need does my neighbor have? And if it was mine, how would I want them to meet that? And then E is just simply expressing it and doing that. So loving others the way God has loved us, His love towards those that we know. It's, we have to know where and how we can meet needs, and then look for those, and then ask, how do you want that need to be met in your life if it was you, and then just do it. And I think when your abilities, your gifts, talents, resources, whatever they are, when they intersect a need, that's your time. Like you are no longer on deck. You're up at the plate, and it's your time to act.
On what?
The plate. You're up at the.
Okay.
Is that what you're going for?
It's okay.
Anytime Grant says something, I'm like, okay, wait, what was
What
the
did I
joke?
just say?
What did I say? What?
I just love when Southerners say deck.
You're no longer on deck.
There you go.
You no longer on deck. You're about
Dixon?
to bat.
Sweet.
You're fixing the bat.
But I like that because we're all familiar with the 5 love languages, and it's a nice resource. But I
Dip,
like
dive,
that
duck.
you're specifically talking about needs, because I think it's even healthier to One, like you said, observe those needs of others, and think about how you would like that met in your own life, and then work to meet it in others. But also, like with couples, knowing the needs of your spouse, and not just couples, but any relationship, friends, family, but specifically your spouse, knowing their needs, because one they change, but also, if we're not actively putting the needs of our spouse, in front of us, so that we know what they are and we realize what they are, then we could be doing great things to try and show them love, but we're going to miss the mark. I remember talking with a couple who seemed to like have everything going great on the outside, and the husband was a real big Dave Ramsey guy, and he was doing all this great stuff for his family. He's buying property and was making some great investments, and they were doing well, and he was wanting to raise his kids right, and I mean, they just seemed on paper to be doing great things. And I remember talking with them, but the wife expressing a little bit of frustration. And I asked them to share what their needs were. And as they were sharing needs, he talked a lot about, stability, financial security. Those were his needs. Well, her need was, I want you to spend time with me. Mm-hmm. And the thing is he was out, doing all these great things, but he was spending a lot of time in other places. And, obviously that relates to, in the love language is quality times, but more than that, it's a need of hers. Now, the need could change, and later on, he's spending so much time with her, she's like, now I need you to go away. Yeah. But it's important for us to be in tune with that, with people that, that we're trying to show love to, is what are their needs, so we can put their needs before our own.
And that may be the 15% of married couples or married people that say they haven't experienced true love. And I'm not necessarily trying to joke on that, but that's it. Like, there's certain ways that we're all designed to be loved, and for them to feel truly loved is to understand how do they communicate, and then jump into that. There's something there.
Yeah.
Well, I love you guys.
Yeah, I love you too.
Seriously, like, I don't feel like I'm just jumping in and saying that. Yeah.
To reply with Star Wars language, I know. We love you too. We phileo and agape you, but we do not eros you, mister.
Yeah, no. Eros.
Our arrows don't shoot that way.
You don't greet your friends with a warm kiss?
Yeah.
Oh, I do.
Let's make like Jonathan and David. And no,
yeah.
Kiss and weep.
That good, huh?
Maybe that's why they're weeping.
Yeah.
You gotta kiss each other? Brushed.
Like David's Michael and Oscar.
Yeah. That's such an awkward scene, but so great.
Yes.
So great. So, a lot of good stuff there. So, love each other well. And think about how you'd want your needs met. Think about how you've been loved by your Lord, and look at others that same way, and just start doing it. Those of you guys who have been doing this, like there is such great joy and blessing that comes from being intentional about trying to meet the needs of others, even when you're hurting. Give it a go. I promise you won't regret it at all. And if you are on a Valentine's date with either of my daughters on Wednesday after listening to this, you better hit the brakes on loving each other.
Yeah, it better be all phileo.
That's right.
Are they both spoken for?
Yep. Well, wait. Well, one is like spoken for.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one is just spoken for.
Ethan.
I got a question. Are you guys big on like Valentine's Day? Like, do you do stuff with your significant other?
I'm not that excited about Valentine's Day, and it's not that I don't love, because I do, but
we have kids, Ryan.
It's one of those things where
that's what happens.
I don't like how our society views it. and sort of the expectations that get put on it. Because I'm like, we should show love all the time and not be afraid to go out on dates with our spouse or whatever, give them gifts or shower them with affection. But we're expected, and so I feel like it's always done sort of just as an expectation rather than I genuinely love you.
I tend to agree with Jim Gaffigan when he says that Valentine's Day is a made-up holiday invented by Hallmark. So,
Yeah.
I think that my wife and I'm lucky that in that we both don't really care about Valentine's Day. It's really, we're more annoyed by it. Like the times we have tried to go out on Valentine's Day, it's terrible because everything's crowded. There's just people everywhere.
night at home with your cat.
Hey.
Itself, on the couch, cats,
But careful, Ryan. That might be a test, mister.
No, it's
might be a test.
We have talked about it. What's funny is though, was actually we started officially dating on Valentine's Day.
Ooh, couldn't wait one more day.
In,
now you're still.
in 2014. So and
Ryan and Kelly.
That very first Valentine's Day, our way of celebrating it was we ordered pizza, ate it at home, or I was at her place, and we ate it at her place, and then we watched
The Notebook.
500 Days of Summer because I thought it was going to be like a cute, like romantic movie. It is not. It's kind of depressing. So it was a great.
So I thought about Braveheart.
relationship.
It's not romantic at all.
So do you recreate that every Valentine's Day now?
I try to, but I try to pick like other depressing movies. So.
Okay. Yeah, like Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Pretty good one.
Ones that really make you just feel just really down at the end.
Like, hey, baby. You know what's on my mind.
See, I feel the only pressure I feel on Valentine's Day is having two daughters like Josh. I just want to set that bar so high that my girls don't end up with losers. So I ask them every year to be my junior Valentines.
So with your kids is great. With your kids, but
Yeah.
I think when you move from dating to marriage, you graduate from Valentine's Day. Right? You don't have to mess with it anymore. Like you're not trying to woo her. I mean, we are still trying to woo our wives, but like she got a ring, she's locked in. But I don't know. I think if you're married and you go all out on Valentine's Day, if you're a guy, I think you're a sissy.
Well, but
All right,
with
now
that-
let's post that and see if Oops 8880.
Oh, yeah.
on it.
Your
Down here-
anniversary is probably much
especially
more
if you're in
important anyways.
Alabama.
down here in LSU country where we fight gators and have beaches.
Every year when I take my sister out on Valentine's, she don't complain. She loves it.
That's in Alabama.
Not only that, I'm going to tag Oops in that.
I think so.
But, the ladies are going to...
Louisiana Sissy University.
But there are a lot of ladies who do, and they may say they don't expect anything, but when they start seeing their friends and their relatives get
And Phyllis.
flowers and gifts and all those things, that temptation is going to sneak in. Does my husband, my significant other, love me that much too? And so,
As much as Bob
I do
Vance.
think we need to be
Vance refrigeration.
mindful that, as we should be every day, but mindful of the day and what it can bring, and leave no doubt. However, whatever that looks like, if it's pizza and Schindler's List, or just taking them out to the mailroom or whatever, make sure that we're mindful of showing them some love. Yeah.
For all you November babies out there, just know your dad did a good job.
It's Valentine's Day.
You're going on November 14th.
I'm going to have you
Exactly.
while I lay on the couch and scratch my belly.
Is that a Muppet Babies tattoo, Josh? Josh has a Muppets baby tattoo.
All right. Well, we did 47 minutes of really great conversation and then like 7 of this. So.
Yes.
It's a
We
great
just
way
wanted
close
you to
this out.
understand if you don't listen to the first part, this is what the first part is.
Yep.
Yes.
You're missing out on a lot.
It's 50 minutes of this.
Yeah.
Louisiana Sucks University.
I think UT beat them yesterday. Well, 2 days ago. Whipped them. No, it was just last night in basketball, but it would have been a week before.
Oh yeah.
Now we'll just cut this part out. It's rambling. All right. We do love you. And I do love you guys.
Kevin's got you covered.